Hello everybody, welcome back to Lyle's first podcast of 2021. It's been an interesting year so far. Let's just talk about Corvettes because they're so much fun than everything else going on in the world. Okay. Today's talk, I'm actually going to do a series of these videos. They're going to be relatively short, but I'm going to provide a lot of information in a very short period of time. The question I get most frequently when people call in here is, I'm looking to buy a C4, a C5, a C6. What's the best year to buy? Now, that's a difficult question to answer. So normally I give a range of years. Before I even go into today's topic, which is going to be what is the best C5 to buy, this is not an indictment of the cars that I'm saying not to buy. If I say that I'd avoid a 98, it doesn't mean that I don't love you and your 98, because 98s are wonderful cars too. I am speaking specifically to the person who doesn't already own a car, and I'm trying to guide them through the buying process, the selection process, to weed out possible future problems. So please understand, any cars that I say, hey, avoid this car, it doesn't mean that yours isn't a good car. It just means that this person, being new to the hobby, should probably try to find something that doesn't have the problems inherent with that particular car. That said, let's get started with what is the best C5 to buy and why. So C5 97 to 04 Corvettes didn't change a whole lot in the entire run. They pretty much looked identical other than exterior-wise, other than wheels and exhaust. They didn't change interior-wise at all, other than having a couple of different colors available early on and then the special editions in 03 and 04. So you're getting a very consistent product throughout the run of C5, which is nice because parts availability and everything else is going to be better than cars like the C4, where they had 3 different interiors and 2 different sets of body panels and. So C97 to 04 C5s. If you're in the market to buy a C5, here's what I recommend. You want to avoid 97 through 2000 cars. Not that there's anything wrong with those cars. Many of them are still on the road. Many of them are wonderful cars. However, they had some systemic problems inherent to those years that are all but unsolvable. The big one being the ABS module, or EBCM, the brain that controls traction control, active handling if you have it, and ABS. Those modules were built by Bosch, and they are constructed in such a way that taking them apart to rebuild them, to fix bad solders, to do that thing, is very, very difficult to do without completely destroying them. Nobody, to my knowledge, nationally has a consistent record of reliably rebuilding those units. They have not been produced brand new for well over a decade. Bosch has told us to our faces when we asked them at SEMA, they will never make them again. So if your ABS system goes bad, if your module goes bad, you're looking at spending somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800 for a used module that's going to have a 30 to 60 day warranty. That's it. Not a great investment. So any cars that have an inherent problem that could happen to you 2 weeks after you buy your car, I'm going to steer you away from, only because I don't want to see you end up having a vehicle you can't enjoy to the fullest. That said, that leaves us with the 01 to the 04 Corvettes. Now, the 01 to 04s had a completely different electronic brake control module, completely different system, most of which is 100% rebuildable 90% of the time. So if you have a problem with those systems, there are fixes available and they aren't ridiculously expensive. The thing you want to be careful of in the 01 to the 04 versions are the 03 and 04 cars that have the F55 magnetic suspension. Here's why. The magnetic shocks are a fantastic achievement. They were so good that Ferrari actually paid to borrow the technology on their own cars. They're that good. The problem is they don't live long. Those shock absorbers began leaking. I think the warranty on them ended at 36,000 miles. I think they started leaking at 36,003 miles. And if your car has less miles than that on it, but is over 10 years old, which at this point they all are, they're probably already leaking. In the 2003, you can actually go in with a GM Tech 2 computer and you can program out the F55 option, convince the car it never existed. It didn't come from the factory that way. You can put regular shocks back on the car, go down the road, solve the problem. No real issues. Takes about half an hour to do. The 2004s specifically, and that includes the Le Mans commemorative cars, which are very popular and carry quite a premium. Any of those cars with the F55 suspension in 2004, your only option when those shocks begin to leak is to go back to GM and buy new F55 shocks. They are not made in the aftermarket, and they run anywhere from $550 to $750 a piece, depending on who has them in stock and where you find them. That's frustrating when you have to dump between the initial cost of the parts and the labor. I mean, you're talking $3-4 grand in shocks just to solve a simple problem. So if you buy a 2004 that doesn't have the F55, you don't have to worry about this. But 2004s equipped with F55 suspension will only accept F55 suspension. 2001 and 2002 cars, you can buy the simulators that go in, plug in at all four corners of the car and convince the car, hey, everything's fine, no worries, and you can put regular shocks on the car. Perfect. You can't use those on an 03, but you can program it out, and you can't use the simulators or program it out on an 04. So those are things you want to be careful of. As with any car purchase, I have people call me saying, hey, I found this car with 9,000 miles on it. It's a 2002 and it's perfect. Should I have any problems in the future? My answer to that is yes, because the car hasn't been driven in the manner it was built to be driven in. So a lot of the things that an owner who would have put 50, 60, 70,000 miles in the last 18 or 20 years onto the car would have addressed as they wore out, dried out, broke, failed, whatever. In a car with only 9,000 miles that gets driven once a weekend, maybe, if you're going to start driving that car with any kind of regularity, you can expect that you're going to have a lot of maintenance to do on things that are going to wear out the more and more you drive the car. A 9,000 mile, 20-year-old car is taking that and saying, okay, I'm going to make this my daily driver because it's perfect, is a lot like saying, I'm going to take this really nice 80-year-old man I know who sits in his couch and watches golf all day, and we're going to start training for a marathon tomorrow. Well, that 80-year-old man's going to have some problems as you start moving forward because he's not used to it. So be forewarned. In sum, I would personally, if I was in the market for a C5, be looking for an 01 to an 04, with special attention paid to the 01 to 02s because they're going to be slightly less expensive and than the 03, 04 with the special editions, and they're not going to have the F55 problem. They have an F45 problem, but again, that can be solved with the simulators I mentioned earlier. So 01 to 04 is the sweet spot. 01 to 02 is the super sweet spot. Obviously, you're going to judge every car on a car-by-car basis, but those are the ones that I would be looking for if I were in the market. If you have questions, if you have ideas, if you have comments on an experience you had buying a C5, below you can comment and tell me all about it, and I'll happily answer any questions, and I'll be interested to hear what your guys' experiences have been as you've gone out into the Corvette market to find your new baby. I look forward to speaking to you next week when we're going to talk about sweet spot, what C6 I would buy. Have a great week.